Hi, we're in John Wesley Bready. This freedom whence, called in England before and after Wesley. Bready is now discussing the evils of convict labor. He's already discussed slavery, labor, African slaves, and even white slavery in the British Isles. Now convict labor, etc. W. Edis, the surveyor of customs at Annapolis, describing in 1770 the condition of these redemptioners, said, quote, "The situation of the free willer is, in almost every instance, more to be lamented than either that of the convict or the indented servant, being attended with circumstances of greater deception and cruelty. The Negro, contended Edis, being a property for life, was often better treated than the miserable European, over whom the inflexible planter exercises an inflexible severity. Exceptions he was prepared to admit, but especially of the Maryland indented servant and redemptioner, Edis affirmed that they groan beneath a far worse than Egyptian bondage. As for the transportation and sale of convicts, this was regularized by an act passed within 5 years of Britain's acquiring the lion's share of the slave trade, and from then, that is 1718, till the outbreak of the American Revolution in 1776, when Franklin and other colonials protested against the dumping upon the New World of the outcasts of the Old. It continued in close relation with the slave trading and kidnapping traffics. The act in question legalized and encouraged a system whereby contractors, assuming responsibility for convicted prisoners, shipped them to the American plantations, whereby selling them, usually at auction, to the tobacco planters for the term of their sentences, they acquired handsome profits. The voyage death rate among these convicts, owing largely to prison-contracted diseases, seems to have equaled, if not surpassed, that of the Negro slave ships. "The mortality we met with in our last ship," reported one contractor, "if repeated in this, will so surfeit us that we shall never take another." A different contractor estimated that over an average of 7 years he lost a seventh of his cargo. And the list of 3 convict ships belonging to 1740 or 1741 show that one carried 153 convicts, 61 of whom died on the voyage. The second had 108, of whom 37 died at sea. The third carried only 50, and of these, 15 died on the voyage. Figures concerning the proportions of the traffic in bound labor, though incomplete, are suggestive. In 1774, the numbers of indented servants and redemptioners registered as sailing from London alone are 1,124 for Maryland, 548 for Virginia, 456 for Philadelphia, and 66 for Georgia, Carolina, and Jamaica. Statistics concerning transported convicts are, for obvious reasons, more easily ascertained. From 1769 to 1776, the yearly number of felons transported averaged 960, of whom a quarter were women, and the sentences of most convicts ranged between 7 and 14 years, while a few were for life. To realize how thin was the partition which separated all this bound and convict labor from the actual institution of slavery, certain incontrovertible facts must be constantly in mind. The indentured laborer was sent chiefly to slave areas. On arrival, he was advertised for sale for the period of his indenture. Frequently, he worked alongside and partook of the same lash and the same food as the Negro slave. At many points, his legal protection was no whit better than that of the black chattel. During the period of his subjection, he could be bought, sold, or trucked about at the master's will. And nearly always he labored under the handicap that the planter assumed he was white trash, deserving the roughest handling and fit only for exploitation. The master, too, having only a temporary property in his labor, had less interest in his well-being than if he were a lifelong slave of substantial capital value. And as for the transported women, their lot frequently was more pitiable than that of men. Numerous and malignant were the economic and political corruptions which, during most of the 18th century, attacked the social life of Britain and her expanding empire. But most devastating of them all was the slave traffic, with its odious retinue of attendant evils. That traffic bequeathed to America the social perversions later to issue in the ghastly Civil War. It bequeathed to England, the chief financial and political source of its expansion, a regiment of social and economic ills which soon, on a vast stage, were to manifest themselves in the cruel exploitations of the Industrial Revolution. Indeed, upon whatever it touched, the slave traffic left the marks of the beast, and the fact that those marks were often concealed and not infrequently unsuspected made them none the less real and none the less vicious in their effects. I want to link to a video we did called Two Views of Slavery. Next time, Bready deals with the South Sea Company and lesser bubbles.